We are live on Proline TV, the Our Football Network, talking about the AFC North for 2025 and specifically the Baltimore Ravens. And of course, that means Tony Lombardi joins us from Russell Street Report. How's it going, Tony?
Everything's great. How about with you, Greg?
Good. I don't have the tan you have, but then again, I haven't been out at camp like you have.
Right.
So how's that been going? Good?
It's kind of a grind. I think of, just the media people standing along the sidelines. I got a funny story for you as well. And when you're standing there, you feel the drops of sweat going down your back. And you're like, oh, it's hot out here. Then I get comforted by the fact that at least I'm not running around out there like those guys are in those pads. And it's a completely different set of circumstance for those guys. I know they're getting paid to do that, but
Yeah.
it is a grind. And if it feels like a grind for a media guy, it's really a grind for a player.
And just imagine, remember years ago when they used to have two-a-days and all sorts of other stuff going on. So
yes, they try to take care of these players. Now, first day of camp, I'm there and I have like this pair of like salmon colored shorts. They're like golf shorts. And I had this turquoise blue Puma shirt on and a hat that coordinated with my shorts.
Purple?
And the salmon color, right?
Salmon color, I mean.
And then I had a pair of sneakers that brought those two colors together.
Oh, so you were matching very well.
I was, and I'm weird that way, but I even match when I go to the gym. But my one of the coaching assistants comes over to me and he says, "Excuse me, who are you?" And I told him who I was. And he goes, I said, "Well, is anything wrong?" He goes, "Well, a couple of coaches wanted me to come over and see who you were." I said, "Do you need me to dress?" And he started laughing, right? And so the next day, the PR guy, vice president of public relations for the Ravens, comes up to me, Patrick Gleason. He goes, "Funny story for you, Tony. The coaching assistants that came up to you yesterday." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Did I do something wrong?" He goes, "No, you didn't do anything wrong. It was the way you were dressed." I said, "What was wrong with the way I was dressed?" He said, "They thought you were a Dolphin scout."
Oh, you were dressed pretty close to those colors?
Yeah. But I said, if I was a Dolphin scout,
you wouldn't dress like that.
Why would I be dressed that way, right?
Yeah. A Dolphin scout? What is that? When do they play in the Ravens? When are you guys playing them?
On the day before Halloween, I think it is.
Wow, that's a long way off. Okay. Yeah. Well, hey, you got to always think that way, though, just to make sure. You never know.
I thought I was going to get my chance, like me and George Plimpton.
Yeah, well, maybe 20 years ago, it would have been a more serious thought. But yeah. So this is a big year, of course, for the organization who has, they've done an awful lot of winning, as you know. Matter of fact, just taking a look over how things have gone for them. They've won 4 division titles, the Ravens have, over the last 7 years, including the last 2. John Harbaugh has earned 12 of 17 playoff appearances with a Super Bowl win and 3 AFC title game losses. So it's a lot of wins, but it is 3 AFC title game losses. So there's that. I'm sure the fans, I've heard nothing negative about the coaching staff or anything like that. So this is just one of those things, isn't it? That with Lamar Jackson, the amount of money he's making, and he wants to make more, and I'm sure he's going to get it, that it is time to take that next step, at least get to a Super Bowl. It's got to be that season, right? Super Bowl or bust.
Well, it feels that way for sure. And I think the players look at it that way as well, because, they walked away from that AFC championship game a couple of years ago with bitter taste in their mouths. And then last year, they turned the ball over 3 times in the divisional game against the Buffalo Bills and still had a chance to tie that game in under 2 minutes. And Mark Andrews dropped the football. But, I think that's really left a bitter taste in their mouth. So they're really focused in on what do we have to do to get over that hump. And in their minds collectively, I don't think it just boils down to one thing, but the one thing they keep talking about is turnovers. We're giving them up and we're not getting them. I think in the playoffs under Lamar Jackson, they've turned the ball over 11 times and had 2 turnovers. Wow. So you're not going to win playoff games that way. And certainly against a good team like the Buffalo Bills, you're not going to go 0-3 in the turnover department and expect to win football games. So there's a big focus and emphasis on that this particular training camp.
Yeah, because if Lamar is going to step up his game. We know that that's part of it, is that he in these big games, in these big moments, every time they just stop their season, that seems to be the issue, is not being able to make the big plays like he was making earlier in the season. But the defense also, the defense has been still solid. I know last year it was a little bit of it was an off year, and they did have the young inexperienced coach. And now I see they bring in Chuck Pagano back. So is that for that specific reason? Is to make sure that Zachary's got somebody like an experienced guy there with him to kind of help him along in case he needs to be helped along with just some basic stuff?
I think it's all those things and more. But I think most importantly is that Chuck is a guy who's got a beautiful list or resume in the coaching department, right? He's got familiarity with the organization, having been in Baltimore before, and he's an excellent DB coach. And that's what they really lacked last year. They wanted to improve in that area. So when you've got a young coordinator like Zach Orr, and Zach really got off to a slow start last year. He was never a play caller in his life. He's younger than a couple of the players that they have on the team. So when you have a guy who looks a lot more comfortable in that job this year, but you've got a guy like a Dean Pease as a consultant and Chuck Pagano on that same sideline, those guys really help him come along and speed up his maturation process as a defensive coordinator. So I think the additions they made to the coaching staff plus his experience is really going to help the defense alone, even if they made no changes at all or
Yeah,
additions personnel wise.
yeah. Let's take a look at the. We'll start there on defense with the Ourlads depth chart, and starting in that secondary. So we talked about Starks and what a great pickup that was to be able to get a player of that caliber late in the first round. And then they made the big acquisition of Jair Alexander. I know they've lost a couple of their rookie corners. Talk a little bit about, especially Alexander. How's that coming along? Because I know he very strange kind of last couple of years in Green Bay, injuries and just kind of not simpatico with the front office, which is why they had eventually let him go. So how's he coming along?
Well, they signed him to a 1-year deal for $4 million guaranteed, with incentives he can make $6 million. And let's face it, Jair's his future. The next contract he gets is going to be his big contract. So his future really rides on this season. So it's incumbent upon him to be healthy and be out there on the field. But they are treating him with kid gloves because he's missed a lot of practice time because he's got this knee that he's working through. So this a minor surgery he had a few weeks ago that he's working through, and I think they're just concerned that they want him ready for game one against the Bills. Today, John Harbaugh was asked that, and he said he will be ready for that game, but he hasn't been practicing much. When he has practiced, he's looked great. And he's got this electric personality that the rest of the team really rallies around. So he's fit right in with the Baltimore Ravens. And to have that kind of backfield with the names you mentioned, along with him and Awuzie as depth. I think that's a formidable backfield. And
Oh
then when
yeah.
you add Chuck Pagano to the mix, he's coming up with different mix and matches, different personnel packages with that talent, depending upon the division or depending upon the opponent that day or that week, and what their core strengths are when you're facing those teams.
Yeah, that's a very exciting looking secondary now. And even with the losses of the depth a little bit with the rookies, but talk about a couple other players. Well, first of all, Adarius Washington. Has there been word yet on whether or not he's going to be on short-term IR, long-term IR? What's the situation there?
I think he'll be on long-term IR. That'll be determined, or we'll hear about that officially probably tomorrow, but by 4 o'clock. But I think it'll be a long-term IR, and they may use one of their two designations to remove a guy from IR and put him on the active roster later in the season. But I think that depends on how the rest of the season goes with the other guys. They've got a couple of young guys who've played well in the preseason. They're UDFA's, and we're waiting to see if they're going to make it through either to be part of the 53 initially, or if they're waived and they're brought back to the practice squad. But guys like Keon Martin, he had an excellent game against the Commanders this past weekend. He had a pick six. He was really good on special teams, and he made a tackle around the line of scrimmage for a loss. So he's looked really solid. And then some of the other guys like Ruben Lowry, he's another undrafted free agent, come out of nowhere all throughout camp. He's made play after play, and he's opened up some eyes. So you got guys like that, and I think that helps offset the loss of Ardarius Washington, even though Ardarius says he'll be back by November.
Okay. And how's TJ Tampa? How's he doing? This is a guy a lot of people believe could be an important part of the secondary when he's healthy. How is he playing? How's he looking?
He had a slow start, but he's a long, corner. He's 6'1", 190. He plays physical, and against the Commanders, he looked really good in coverage. He had a play that was called back for a penalty, not against him. It was an offside encroachment penalty on a Jabo, but it was called back. It was a 9 route down the left sideline. He had him covered like a blanket and had a PD on the play. So he's looked good, and I think he had a slow start, but he's coming on strong, and I think they have high hopes for Tampa.
Okay, the rest of the defense at linebacker, how's that room looking right now outside? Well, it's starting with Trenton Simpson. How's he been playing? And then a couple of new guys. Hummel comes in as a free agent, and they drafted Buchanan.
Okay, let's start with Simpson. Simpson's looked really good. He seems to have put in a lot of time in the film room. He's been like an understudy for uh, Roquan Smith. They've been attached at the hip. He's really learned a lot from him. Learned how to look at film, and I think that's helped him along with the mental processing of the game. So when you could start to let your innate skills take over because you're processing faster, with what you're through your experience, I think that helps him to make more plays on the field. Looked really good against the Commanders also. Teddy Buchanan, they really like the way he runs sideline to sideline. He quickly diagnoses plays, and to give you an idea how impressed they are with his mental capacity, he wore the green dot when Roquan Smith wasn't in the game.
Okay.
So that's kudos to him. He had a blown coverage the other day. He's been biting on play action to come to the line of scrimmage, and tight ends getting behind him.
Hmm.
The Commanders had a big play. Their only big play of the game was a 51-yard completion to a tight end on a seam route that Teddy kind of blew that coverage, and we had a couple missed tackles down the field. But other than that, Buchanan's been really solid. And Hummel's a guy that probably is going to be more of a special teams specialist. He's going
Yeah.
to be focusing on that, gives them a little bit of depth. But the other guy that could surprise, and we talked about him earlier this year, is Jay Higgins. Jay Higgins has played really well this preseason. I know it's just preseason, but he's checked all the boxes. He's done everything he can. There's a lot of people that are worried that the Ravens might not put him on the 53, and because of the way he's played, he will, end up on somebody else's roster. But there's this guy, I don't know if you follow him on Twitter. His name is Nick Corte, and he does a lot of things with contracts and salary cap and things of that nature. And he wrote that out of 851 players cut in the summer of 2023, only 24 were claimed off waivers. So every team is focused on their own guys. They would like to get back on the practice squad. They're not looking to pilfer other teams'
Yeah.
cuts. So only 2.82% actually were taken from one team's roster to another via the waiver wire process.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a long commitment. You're not just
Yes.
allowed to pick these guys up and then just throw them on your practice squad like the Ravens can.
Right.
So, hey, yeah, so it makes sense. Because yeah, I mean, Higgins is a guy that he's not a combine king. So that's the problem. That's the reason why he wasn't drafted. But he's everything else. He's a football player.
Right.
And that's why I'm sure the Ravens are seeing, hey, he could play football. So perfect situation, and probably deserve to be either a late round pick or a free agent.
Yeah, he's had a sack or two in preseason. He had an interception. He had a PD. So he's made plays when he's been called upon. And some people think that he's played better than Buchanan.
Interesting. Well, he sure played better than Buchanan in college, so maybe not a
It's a good
surprise.
problem to have, though, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's see up front. Oh, so the pass rush. Okay, so it's important if this pass rush is going to get back to what made the Ravens defenses of the past really dangerous. Some players other than a Kyle Van Noy really need to step up. At least either one guy's got to step up and have like a Pro Bowl type year, or two or three of the young guys have got to all contribute really well together. How's that coming along? Away, Robinson, Isaac, and Ajabo, and even Mike Green, the second round pick.
Well, Isaac, he dislocated his elbow. He's going to be on IR to start the season too.
Okay.
So he won't be available, I don't think, until probably late October, early November.
Okay.
He
So
did look
short
good
term.
before the injury, though.
Okay.
Ojabo, he's made a couple of plays in preseason, but there are times where it feels like he disappears. So I
Same
think
old, same old.
yeah, nothing's changed. Although he says he feels like he's gotten better because he doesn't have the injuries to deal with now, and he can focus on football. I think it's hard to tell so far through training camp and the preseason if he's there yet. I guess we're going to find out tomorrow if they decide to keep him or not. But he's a name that if they did cut him, I could see another team trying taking a swing at him
Like
because he was
Seattle?
a second round pick. Yeah, there could be that, a second round pick that was projected as a first round pick before he had that Achilles injury.
Yeah.
So then you've got a Owe who had 10 sacks last year. He's beefed up into 260 pounds. I think he played at 245 last year,
Hmm.
and he looks just as fast as he did at 245. But again, we haven't seen much of his play because he's been limited to practice and hasn't played at all in the preseason games. And you mentioned Mike Green. The accolades coming all over from about Mike Green, and even a small amount of film that he's got on tape right now with respect to preseason games. He's looked really good. He's got explosiveness and power. He seems to already be equipped with moves, and Chuck Smith's working closely with him. But he's got that bend, that get low and drop your shoulder underneath those big tackles kind of ability. And you can't teach that. That's something you either innately have or you don't. And I think he's going to be a force. I don't know, and he looks like he holds up pretty well on the edge, setting the edge against the run. So they may have really gotten something in that second round pick.
Well, again, a lot of people thought Green had the ability to be a top 15, top 20 pick.
Right.
And so we heard about the off the field stuff. And sometimes you got to take advantage of those situations. And it looks like the Ravens have been able to do that, which is not a surprise. That's why the Ravens are the Ravens. So Tavius Robinson, I heard that the coaching staff was real excited about him during this spring, that felt that this could be a really big year for his development. Has that come along at all?
Yes. I'm glad you brought him up. He's been compared to Jared Johnson. If you remember Jared Johnson
Yeah.
back in the day, and
Okay.
just one of those guys who willingly does all the dirty work. He might not get all the accolades, but he helps set up other players. He had a really good game in that divisional game against the Bills. And so the big lights didn't, intimidate him at all. So he's ready to step up. And when word got around that Jared Johnson was his comparable, he came out and said, interestingly enough, that he is my guy. I do study his film
Okay.
because of his style of play fits what I do. And I don't know if somebody in the building brought it up so that, they were comparing him to Jared Johnson. Maybe they suggest he start looking at some of Jared Johnson's film. But when Jared Johnson heard this, he came to training camp and started working after practice with Tavius. So
That's cool.
this is a guy who's got a tremendous work ethic. The coaches love him. He's going to he's going to get a lot of snaps, and they're looking for production. Whether he's one of those sack guys, like Jared Johnson was at the top of his game, maybe a 6 or 7 sacks a year kind of guy.
Sure.
I could see that with Tavius Robinson too.
Okay. But week 1, if he's healthy, he's starting.
Yes.
Okay. Up front, Madubuike didn't have as big as a season as he had the previous year. Was there any particular reason for that?
I have 2 theories on that. One, when they didn't bring back Jadeveon Clowney, which that's still a possibility. When they didn't bring him back last year, he was commanding a lot of attention off the edge because he's a powerful, dynamic athlete. And I think that helped to loosen things up a little bit for Nnamdi. Last year, Travis Jones wasn't 100%. So teams could double up on Nnamdi a little bit more than they had the previous year. This year, Travis Jones is looking like a beast. He's in a contract year, and we know what that means.
Uh-huh.
But so you got Travis Jones coupled with Nnamdi, and I think that when you put those two together when they're both 100%, they're a dangerous tandem. And I think that, along with the rotation of Broderick Washington and John Jenkins and even Aeneas Peoples, who has looked really good in training camp, I think that'll keep those guys fresh. So I'm looking for a really good season for that interior defensive line.
Yeah, Peebles is one of these guys that he had the production of a player that should have been drafted a lot higher than the 6th round, but he's just a small guy for the
Right.
position. Not very tall, a little bit underweight, depending on what kind of system you're in. But again, just like we said with Higgins, you're a football player, and sometimes the tweeners do have issues. But it's good to hear that he's been looking good, just like Higgins in the preseason. So now they just got to take that next step, and maybe we'll see what kind of action they get in the regular season. Of course, Higgins still has to make the team, but it sounds like the way you're talking, Higgins and Peoples might be making this team.
They could, yeah. Well, Peoples, I think, is almost a lock to make the team. I think Higgins, they might try to get him on the practice squad.
Okay, let's swing on over to offense. All right. So, what is the latest on Lamar and his contract? What his new contract? What's going on? Because it's just, I remember hearing about it a few months ago, and I know time flies with us as we get older, as you know. And I was like, contract? Didn't he just sign a contract extension? Like, and I had to do the research, and it's like, yeah, I guess it was only a couple of years ago, but it's the thing about it's almost like politics, as soon as they get in. As soon as you're done with the 4-year deal, it's like it feels like 2 years later you're already hearing about the next term again, the next election again. It's like, are we at that time again? Do we have to start 2 years of an election process again? And that's what they do with contracts nowadays. It's like they sign the contract, and about a year or two later, when they got a year or two left on the contract, they want another extension. But I'm not blaming Lamar. They all do it.
Yeah, he's under contract through 27. He does not, in his contract, he cannot, the Ravens can't use the franchise tag on him. They cannot.
Okay.
And so the reason that the contract talks have heated up, it's more about the Ravens looking to extend him because his cap number next year approaches $75 million.
Wow.
And that's the same in both 26 and 27. So they're trying to extend him to bring those cap numbers down, free up some cap space now because they've got a couple other big signings. They want to get Kyle Hamilton under contract. Just met some Travis Jones. They want to get him under contract. They've got their center, Tyler Linderbaum. They want to get him under contract. So all those contracts are going to be healthy contracts, and Lamar's extension really helps them create some salary cap flexibility. So I think it's more about that than it is Lamar saying, "Hey, when am I getting paid?"
And that's a good thing for Lamar because he'll get more guaranteed money.
He's got some leverage right now for sure, particularly when they don't have the franchise tag, wild card to play.
Okay. How has Cooper looked as the backup in case they need him? Because Lamar's had his injury issues here and there. He has to miss a game or two, and which is not a surprise. With as an athlete like he is. Does Cooper look like he'd be ready to pick things up right away?
I think he's a better alternative than what they've had as a backup quarterback. The interesting thing to me has always been, from the time I heard that they signed him, is that his game is so different than Lamar's. Completely different. They're like polar opposites.
That's true.
So that if, God forbid, a Lamar Jackson injury happens and he's out a couple of 3 games, the offense has to change dramatically for Cooper Rush to be successful. They can't do the same things with him as they could with Lamar. So that's why you always had like a Tyler Huntley or an RG3 behind Lamar Jackson, because they could produce in certain ways like Lamar. They wouldn't have to flip the script of the playbook when those guys came in. With Cooper Rush, you're looking at a different animal, but I think they like his experience. They like what he's done as coming in, filling in for Dak Prescott last year, and I think they have a more accomplished backup quarterback with Cooper Rush than they've had in the past.
All right, now tight end. This is a big story, of course, this camp because of Mark Andrews. So let's start with him. How's that going?
He looks great. He can't wait to put the Buffalo game behind him, and it's still lingering. Those things still come up. It's just like whenever a season ends on a bad play, and you don't get to play for a long time to, put that in your rearview mirror, then I think that, you get that chip on your shoulder, and I think it's motivating him. He works harder than anybody out there on the practice field, so he's really motivated, and he's playing for another contract. I don't think it's going to be with the Ravens, but he's playing for his next contract too.
Do you think that there is another big season? Does he have another big season left in him?
It depends on the ball distribution. Likely's injury, they've been kind of hush hush with this as to the extent of the injury. He
Okay.
had surgery on his ankle. Early indications are he might miss a couple of 3 games. So when he gets back, there's going to be some rust. So that gives Mark Andrews an opportunity to get some traction, to have a bigger year. And he's been one of Lamar Jackson's favorite targets all through his career. They came in together. So I think he'll have another big year. But if Likely gets back sooner than we think and he gets some traction going, Likely is the future. And it will be interesting to see the ball distribution once those two guys are back in the mix together.
At wide receiver, now this is it's interesting because the last few years everybody talks about the Ravens have got to get Lamar Jackson some receivers, and lo and behold, this receiving unit is bar none the best group he's ever had, and I don't even think it's close. And
You're
that's
right.
because Walker has ability to take another step. Wallace, Wester, the draft pick, you see already in the preseason what he can do. Bateman, as you know, of course, has made that next step in his career. And we all know about Flowers, and then they bring in DeAndre Hopkins. So they've got 6 guys. I'm not saying they really necessarily need the other 3, but yeah, I mean, it's very possible if they have to go to Walker, Wallace, or Wester for whatever reason, they want to implement those guys into the offense every game or two. They can do that.
They can, and they've all looked good. Let's start with Walker. He's been like a camp star. Now we've seen camp stars in the past, and there was a quote from Cam Cameron back in the day when he was a Ravens offensive coordinator, when they were talking about Tandon Doss. Remember that guy?
Yes, I do.
Tandon Doss was looking really good during
Yeah,
training camp.
Indiana receiver or something like that. I forget.
Yes, he was handpicked by Joe Flacco. And so they asked Cam Cameron after one of the practices, after Tannen Doss had another good practice, to comment on Doss's development. And I'll never forget his answer. He said, "Let's see what happens when we introduce the threat of contact." And I went, wow, that's very telling. So anyway, my point being that Devontae Walker, he's looked really solid in preseason and during camp. He's a different kind of receiver because has a bigger catch radius, bigger target for Lamar. So that's good. Tylan Wallace, whenever they've asked him to step in games and do something, he's done it. He just never gets to start, but he's done well. And LeJounte Wester, I got to tell you, Greg, I just thought, okay, this kid's being brought in just to be a punt returner because I look at the kick return specialty as being really aligned for a running back style than it is in this today's
True.
configuration. So I don't look at as a smaller receiver as being as effective as he would be as a punt returner, and he's looked great as a punt returner. But I've been really impressed with the way he runs routes and the way he catches the ball because he doesn't have a long history of that at Colorado. So he had a decent year last year, but not enough to really make him open eyes at the NFL level as a receiver. But he's done really well when given the opportunity. And then the other 3 guys, Zay Flowers is just a beast. Rashad Bateman's really come on strong. He's a home run threat. And then what can you say about Hopkins? He's a guy that brings that boundary kind of move the change, make the tough catch along the sidelines or in the red zone kind of guy. He brings leadership. As you said, I think they've really got the best mix they've ever had of receivers, certainly during the Lamar Jackson era.
And with Derrick Henry, the freak of nature he is, for a guy that big, and he's getting a little older and a lot of wear and tear, it just doesn't matter. He just keeps on trucking. So I'm assuming at this point he just looks like the old Derrick Henry.
He does. He spends $250,000 every offseason to take care of his body, does the things that no one
Wow.
else wants to do or is willing to do, and or invest the money. He just takes care of himself. So, when they say he's 31 years old, I'll say, okay, he might be he's he's like the new 27, his 31.
Right.
So I'm not worried about him at all. You got Justice Hill, who's just a great football player. He just does a lot of different things. He's a good receiver out of the backfield, runs those wheel routes very successfully. He's a good change of pace runner. He blocks terrifically in pass protection, and even getting out on the edge if he's got to lead somebody on those bubble screens and whatnot. But and then they've got Keaton Mitchell. He's like a different dimension, real fast, back to the speed that he was at when he was successful with the team in 2023. It'll be interesting to see all these guys we've just talked about, Greg. It'll be interesting to see how um, the Ravens weave those guys into the
Yeah.
offense, how Todd Monken comes up with game plans. My guess is he's going to look at the opponent's weaknesses and use the guys that he thinks that can best exploit those weaknesses on any given Sunday.
Well, Keaton Mitchell is sort of reminds me of a little bit like Christian McCaffrey, where he's got a small body, and you knew eventually that because of that body, he's just going to get hurt. You can't deal with that kind of wear and tear in the NFL with the body like that and go injury free. And now he's been injured and he's back, and then you just hope that that's it. You hope that, all right, he's had his injury, and you just keep your fingers crossed that nothing serious like that happens again, especially at this stage of his career, because again, he's such an exciting player. Especially remember watching him in college and thinking that, hey, why can't he be that guy in the NFL? And then he looked that part, and then unfortunately the injuries. So yeah, he could do a lot of damage for the Ravens if he stays healthy, no question. And even Ali is a guy that had a good career in the group of five level of college football. And now that he's healthy, it's nice to see him have a pretty good preseason.
He's had a really good preseason. I think what impressed me the most during training camp is the way he navigates inside the tackles. He's got the jump cut, those kinds of things, and he's patient, and he's a north and south runner, sticks his foot in the ground and just moves forward. He's always gaining positive yards, and he's tough to bring down when if you try to tackle him up high. So he's an exciting player. I don't know if he makes the 53, Greg. They might want to try to slide him on the practice squad, but I think a guy with his skill level might not make it to the practice squad round. So yeah, it'll be tough to. He's one of the tougher cuts if they're going to make that. He does contribute on special teams, which helps him a lot. But I can't remember the last time the Ravens actually had four running backs, not counting Patrick Ricard as a
Sure.
running back. I don't know. I can't remember the last time they carried four. But if he's going to do all those little things on special teams, then maybe he'll find a way onto the 53.
And that's the thing, is that when you have that fullback, and not every team has a fullback
Correct.
that's taking out of that spot. So we talked about some of the CFAs on defense, and it looks like there's going to be a couple of guys that might make the team. But do you think any of these guys has a shot on offense? I mean, because Scott was really just brought in to kind of maybe eventually replace Ricard if he can do that. I'm assuming, is he just a practice? Because I don't think anybody's taking a chance with Lucas Scott on the practice squad. So is that what their outlook is on Scott?
I think it's absolutely the outlook, and you just said it too. Not many teams utilize a fullback the way the Ravens use a fullback. Maybe there's 5 or 6 other teams that use it that way. Maybe I'm selling it a little short, but it
Oh,
just seems that these guys they're a rare breed that has to fit a certain style of offense. And I don't think that's I don't think a guy like Scott's in danger of being picked up by somebody else. And I think it's exactly for that reason. I think, this might be Pat Ricard's last year under contract, and it's been the Ravens' history to graduate to someone new, in
okay.
that position. They've kept Ricard around longer than they've kept most fullbacks, because I think he's a special guy. He does a lot of things for that team, and we'll see. But those are big shoes to fill for Scott. If the Ravens think that they're going to keep him around and maybe take his job next year, that remains to be seen. But it's a good problem to have all this depth.
Is he the only guy on offense out of the CFAs that would have a chance to make the team, or is there someone else that we're not
No,
really?
I think any of the other guys maybe practice squad candidates along the offensive line, but I don't think any of them make the team. Although UDFA's are guys that are looked at as being defensive guys that have a chance. And the Ravens have a history of getting production out of undrafted free agents, and it looks like this year 2 or 3 might make the team.
And then finally on the offensive line, so how's that guard tandem looking? And as Rosengarten just picked up where he left off last year. Sometimes, the sophomore deal, you can have one of those backwards kind of seasons, but they did bring in No Boom. Vincent, of course, they drafted. So is that really the one part of the offense, maybe entirely, that they have to really concentrate on and make sure that they've got quality play on opposite sides of Tyler Linderbaum?
I think the tackle positions, they're solid. Stanley's looking good. He seems to be more motivated than I've ever seen him. You've got Rosengarten, as you said. He had a good rookie season, built and got improved along the season. He's looking solid. At left guard is Voorhees, who's looked really good in
Okay.
camp. So the coaches have spoken highly of him. Center, of course, you've got Linderbaum. The right guard position is my big question mark.
Okay.
Now, I have not been a Daniel Falele fan. I think his athleticism suspect, and if he lines up against quick defensive tackles, he really struggles. I don't know that he's that great out in space. If he's got an assignment and he can hit his man, he's going to be effective. But if he's got to look around and find somebody, he looks really clumsy, and I worry about him allowing an easy penetration by a defensive lineman who has a straight shot to Lamar. That's my biggest concern about the Ravens offense is Falele. But hey, the coaches sound like they don't share my concerns, so they know more than I do.
We'll see. And Emory Jones, what's his health status?
I don't know if he'll see the field in 2025. He'll be designated for IR, and I don't know if he'll be one of the guys they bring back, to make active in the season. So we'll see. I guess it depends on how the other guys do.
Huh. Okay. So what is his ailment?
I think he's got a shoulder ailment that hasn't allowed him to practice at all.
Okay. So
I think that's what it is. Shoulder. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a shoulder situation.
So does that mean that out of all the other positions on the team, if the Ravens were going to look to add, whether a deal or picking up a free agent, something like that, like a veteran, that would be a position that they would want to pick up, another interior offensive lineman?
I think so, because Ben Cleveland is a guy that John Harbaugh, during that draft, I don't know what draft it was, maybe it's 2022, he was pounding on the table for Ben Cleveland. Then when he showed up in Baltimore, all of a sudden Ben Cleveland was in the doghouse. And they cut him last year. They brought him back this year on a non-guaranteed deal. And, I think he provides decent depth. But for some reason, I feel like if he's not better than Falele, then he's probably never going to be a starter in the NFL, the way I look at it. And, but yeah, to answer your question, if the Ravens were going to go and get a player off the street now that's available in free agency, whether it's somebody else's cut or a guy that's out there now, I think I mentioned the one guy before, Jadeveon Clowney, I could see coming back, and a guard, I could see them going up and making a play for the best guard that's out there that fits their style of offense.
Okay. And then the special teams, I know it was real important for them to get some of the players they drafted to improve their special teams. So there's that. But more importantly, Tucker gone, rookie in. It worked for Stout a couple of years ago. They're hoping to have some sort of success similar to that with Tyler Loop. He had some competition earlier during the spring. He's the man right now. So how's he looking?
Well, he connected on 3 field goals against the Commanders. One was 46 off the top of my head. The other one was 52, and the last one was 61.
Oh, so
So
that sounds like he's doing okay.
sounds like he's doing okay. And I think that they were trying to get him into some pressure situations, because I think it's pretty much everyone's opinion that the kid has the leg strength and the talent to be a really good kicker in the NFL. The question is, what do you do when there's 3 seconds left on the clock? You're in Pittsburgh. You got a chance to hit a 52-yard field goal, and you're down by 2. Are you going to be able to hit that walk-off
That
field
is
goal the way
true.
Justin Tucker used to do it? And he's got big shoes to fill. He really does. I mean, Justin Tucker, before all the things happened with him, he was going to be a Hall of Famer. And those are big shoes to fill. But so far, so good with Tyler Loop. And they've got this new saying now, whenever he kicks it through, they go, "Loop, there it is."
Okay. That's nice. We'll get used to that.
Hopefully we do, yeah.
Hopefully, yeah. Let's wrap up. Oh, I guess I ran out of time here. let's move this out of here. Put this back in. All right. So let's take a look at where are we? Oh, these are the wins. Okay. So let's take a look where the Ravens are as far as their win total. I believe they are 11.5. So what do you think about that? 11.5 on the win total. That's the number Vegas says for Baltimore. What do you
Yeah,
think?
that's a big number, right? 11.5 given their schedule. So, but I think I'm going to go over on that one. I have the Ravens
12,
winning
12 and
13.
5.
I
Oh,
think they're going to win
13.
13 games this year.
Wow. All right. Well, let's take a look at the schedule then. 13. So that's only 4 losses. You got let's look at the really tough ones. So you got the Bills, of course. And what's interesting is the opening game there is against the 2 teams that are considered the top 2 teams now in some of the sports books at Super Bowl odds at 6-1. Yep, the Bills and Ravens 6-1. And then 7-8 for the rest, including the Eagles and so forth. So they'll be playing week 1. So you got the Bills on the road. You got Detroit at home. You got the Chiefs on the road. Houston at home. Rams at home. Well, that's not bad. That's pretty good. Division games, I don't want to count those. Packers, you can 6 on the road. Yeah, okay. So there's six really tough non-division games. And then the rest, as far as the division games, which are potentially going to be tough between the Bengals and the Steelers. So out of those, say, 10 games, that's 10. Let's do the math. Say you win all 7 of the other games. If you split that, that's 12, and you go a little bit more, you're 13. Okay. So I see where you're coming from. I'm sure it's a lot. You got your method is a lot different than mine, but it's I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, and I haven't really gone through and said, okay, they'll win this one, lose that one, and to get to 13. This team feels right now. They just feel like they're gelling, they're coming together. They have a chip on their shoulder. They're tired of hearing that they can't make the big plays in the playoffs. It just feels like it's coming together. But still, even if they get the 13 wins, they still got to do it in the playoffs, right? It reminds me a lot of like the Peyton Manning Indianapolis Colts before he made it to the Super Bowl. I mean, he had that cloud hanging over his head. Same with Lamar. Until you do it, that cloud's going to remain.
You're absolutely right. And that's what we kicked off the interview with, was exactly that, is that's where they're at. That's why it's got to be Super Bowl or bust. You see, I think they're the heaviest favorite. Maybe Buffalo might be. Yeah, I think it's Buffalo. Yeah, Buffalo is at 330. Jesus. But the Ravens, are you surprised at all that they're almost a 2-1, a 1-2 pick with the Bengals and the Steelers in the division, or you think that's about right?
I think that the Ravens are the most complete team in the division. The Steelers have a lot of question marks for
They
me.
do.
And I mean, it could all gel for them. They've got some star power for sure now through trades and whatnot. But I don't know. And the Bengals have so many questions on defense. They had a bad defense last year, and it's gotten weaker. So, and that was with Trey Hendrickson. I know there's some talk that he's going to be on the field come opening day, but and he'll probably show the world that training camp wasn't needed because he'll probably have a couple of sacks in his first game. But other than that, they just really struggle on defense. And then the Browns are the Browns. I mean, they're probably the only team that's going to keep 4 quarterbacks on their roster, right? Because none of them are any good.
I can't imagine that, but you're probably right. That'd be so ridiculous. But what are you going
Right.
to do? They have none. That's the old theory. That's the old theory, right?
Right.
You got none really if you have 4. They're looking to next year. That's the whole reason that they made the trade with Jacksonville in the first place, was to get that extra first round pick so they can use it next year to get the guy they want. Because really, if you're looking at it now that I've done all of my research for college football, I mean, you're going to have 3 viable. I think it could be Drew Aller, Nussmeier, and Klubnik could go 1, 2, 3, and those 1, 2, 3 I think would have been 1, 2, 3 Ward 4. So that's how good those guys next year are going to be. They're going to be better than all 3 of them, and that's just 3 of them. There might be a couple other guys that might be in the mix. So that's why the Browns did what they did. They were looking at next year, but it does make you wonder why would they keep 4 then? We know Flacco is going to start, but Pickett would be the guy that would make the most sense. Just some team you would think might want a backup quarterback.
Right.
So
Right. I don't get it, but we always say here in Baltimore, that's the Browns doing Browns things.
yes, absolutely. Okay, so that is going to wrap it up, Tony. I look forward to the opportunity. Of course, it's the Ravens, so it'll be a long season for you, including the playoffs. And I hope we'll have some time to talk to you during the season, maybe before a couple of big games. So I'm looking forward to that. Meanwhile, I've got links in the description of this video where you can check everything out from Russell Street Report, follow Tony and the site and everything that Russell Street Report can give you for the Ravens. And you've got, do you have a regular podcast schedule?
We're coming out with something new, but it's not going to be a lengthy podcast. It's going to be on shorter pieces. So we're lining that up with a new sponsor. And if anything changes, I'll let you know. But thank you for that.
You do that, Tony. I appreciate it as always. Again, I look forward to talking to you during